Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux, 3 races ahead of us. This is the first of 2 qualifying sessions this morning on a greasy looking track. 2 15-minute sessions. The first one defines the grid for the first of our races, and the second, and then you combine the times and you get the average, and that defines the grid for race number 3, which is different because that will have a rolling start. As you can see out around the circuit, still damp patches, but compared to the start of the day when it was uniformly wet, things are improving all the time. Temperatures were very low, track conditions freezing or 1 degree above at the start of play today. Air temperature was about 8.5 degrees. It's rising all the time, but caution will be required. So Michael Kuhl, one of the Pro-Am runners, he is second in the Pro-Am class, 4th overall for NGT Racing. Very much a lap of exploration. One thing that strikes me looking at the Porsche Carrera Cups Benelux is they have 2 super promising teenagers at the top of the pile. Luc Hartog set off this season taking victory in the opening round. He's 17, but he's old in comparison to Maurice Schuring, who is just 15 years old. And at that same meeting, the 15-year-old for Team GP Elite took a second place and then victories at the second time of asking. How's that for making everyone feel a whole lot older? Jean-Pierre Verhoeven shares with his son Jackson Verhoeven one of the speed lover cars, and it often happens that one will do the first race and then they decide who will do races 2 and 3. They're running 6th and 7th in the overall championship because not having done all of the races as they chop and change between them. But really, in the championship battle at the moment, it's Luc Hartog at the top for Bas Kooten Racing, 80 points. Exactly the same score as Maurice Schuring, because they both had 2 seconds and 2 firsts in the 4 races so far. The opening round was at Zolder, second round, last time out, Nürburgring. Now Zandvoort, then we go to Zolder again and Assen to conclude this truncated season, or should I say compressed season that we're all having in 2020 as we battle to get going again after so much of the early season was lost to the COVID-19 pandemic. Parts of the circuit look dry, other parts, as you can see, very much not. There is a thin racing line. Corners particularly critical. The dive into Cheblach, just looking at Jean-Pierre Verhoeven diving down and through there, and it really does drop away on the drivers. They're trying to get some balance as they arrive at Masters. A lot of drivers in some of the other sessions going for a little spin through Masters and down to this point on the circuit, turn 9, wherever the cars have to turn. Also, wherever the lower points of the circuit where the wind that is blowing in off the sea doesn't quite reach to help dry the track, but it's not going to drive fast today because, let's face it, it's the last weekend in September. So many races I've been to over the years at Zandvoort have been in high summer, and anything can dry quickly then, but right now really struggling to get air temperature to help them on their way. Name moving to the top of the timesheet, speed lover Porsche driver, that's Gilles Smits. 1 minute 46.9 seconds, very early days yet. Next up, Stephen Van Rie for Team GP Elite. Clearly looking at Jean-Pierre Verhoeven, his splits are very good indeed, and this lap will move him up the charts, but those splits are only in comparison to his out lap, so not too much to be drawn into it yet. And Verhoeven goes over the line, goes up into 5th place as the top AM class runner. Sorry, Gilles Smits, fastest of all, is the top AM Cup runner. Now, if you look around the circuits, you'll see they're not all GT3 Porsches, they also are a trio of GT4 runners. In fact, at the moment, they are running 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Stephen Van Rie, top of the GT4 pile. All 3 of them entered by Team GP Elite. Thierry Vermeulen comes next. And then 3rd of the GT4 pile is Alexandre Godin. But we've had all of them demoted because now we've got Nicolas van Dierendonck going up into 2nd overall. He's 3rd in the championship, top Pro-Am runner. But Maurice Schuring, look out for this young man. And I say young, only 15 years old. Already in that middle sector, a second quicker than anyone else has managed. So I think we'll have a new name at the top of the charts. No, wave goodbye to Gilles Smit. And welcome Maurice Schuring, faster by 2.6 seconds. So very good indeed. And he's looking for the challenge from Luc Hartog, who has yet to set a flying lap. Slowest of the 11 runners at the moment, but those are 2 equal at the top of the championship. So look out for number 4, running for Bas Kooten Racing, black. with red and orange flashes up the side. And Luke will be putting this lap together, stringing it together, yet to put that time on the board. And as soon as Maurice Shoring went to the top, so fast are the drivers getting used to this conditions that suddenly 2.5 seconds faster, having found a mere 5 seconds on that lap. Gilles Smits to the top of the charts. Car 63, Nicolas van Dierendonck is down in 9th place overall. The times are improving so quickly. What had him up in around 2nd place a short time ago. But look, in those first 2 sectors alone, he's found the best part of 2.2 seconds. Drivers really becoming accustomed. Slingshot through that fabulous new bank curve on the Arie Luijendijk-bocht. And now in full sunshine around the circuit. Expect great improvement from Nicolas van Dierendonck up to 4th place. Finding a lot of time, but a lot more to be found. He's 2.8 seconds down on that brilliant lap from Gilles Smits, but I tell you what, that's going to be shattered by Maurice Shoring. Car 14, 15-year-old Maurice Shoring, Team GP Elite, way up in the first sector, way up in the second sector, may dip down to the low 1 minute 41. So let's take a look across the start-finish line. That's pretty low, 1 minute 41, 1 minute 41.082, 3/4 of a second to the good over Gilles Smits. Still waiting for Luke Hartog, the joint championship leader, to put a proper flying lap in. His best one at the moment, it's quite hard to calculate. Well, it's not. It's 20 seconds down on the best by his rival, Maurice Shoring. But look out for number 4. Definitely be picking up the pace. The Gulf liveried Team GP Elite Porsche Cayman in the hands of Alexander Godin. That's kind of he's 25. That's Harold Godin, Father Godin. He's in the penultimate position. And now, suddenly, we get Luke Hartog, still the slowest, but he just banged in the fastest first sector of anyone. Target time, 1 minute 41.0, Maurice Shoring. Michael Kuhl goes second. Gilles Smits was first, back into 3rd place. They're all in the 1 minute 41s. The next on the chart is Jean-Pierre Verhoeven. He's 4th overall, but he's best part of 2.6 seconds down. But here comes Luke Hartog on the move in number 4 out of the Hansen Bocht. That leaves the final couple of corners. He's going to take, well, huge chunks out of his best time. His time in that first sector alone up by 0.881 of a second. Again, down the drop out of the bank corner onto the start finish straight goes Luke Hartog. He was 11th, he is 11th, and he goes into 1st place, 1 minute 40.0. He's good. Up by an entire second on Maurice Shoring. Maurice is picking up the pace around this lap, but Luke Hartog took a couple of laps longer to assess the situation. Just to reiterate, there are 15 minutes in this qualifying session, number 1, to settle the grid for this afternoon's race. 2 races tomorrow, and the second qualifying session will sort both of those. Gilles Smits coming around the corner. He should be improving, but he's got to find a tiny fraction. He might go up into 3rd place. Would he stay 4th? He stays 4th. Does not improve that time around. Very close to his best, but Speed Lover Entry stays in 4th position. Bad news for all the rival drivers out here is Luke Hartog. There he is, car number 4, picking up the pace yet more by smaller margins this time around. Again, 0.14 of a second gain in the first sector, all good. This rate, he should be going into the 1 minute 39s on this lap. Oh yes, definitely with that really, really strong middle sector to his lap. He's taken nearly a second, but he's taken exactly a second off his best time so far. Could even get into the 1 minute 38. A good run through the penultimate corner, sweeping up, carrying as much momentum as he dares out of Kumo. It then opens out into Arie Luijendijk-bocht, the less severe corner, but that wonderful new banking. Definitely a thrill for all the drivers who are experiencing it for the first time. What will Luke Hartog do? Will he get into 138? 1 minute 38.815 seconds to the good by 1.4 seconds from his rival, Maurice Shoring. Maurice picking up the pace, but he's not matching the pace of Hartog at the moment. So 17-year-old faster than 15-year-old. It seems strange to say that when looking at drivers in GT3 Porsches and a handful of Porsche Caymans, but it's the teenagers 1st and 2nd. So it comes as little surprise at the moment. Everyone picking up their pace. Harold Godin at the bottom of the charts at the moment, not yet improving. He's one of the few that's not picking up the pace. Car number 25, Alexander, his son, also racing in a Cayman. And Alexander a bit further up the grid, 1 minute 44. He's 3.5 seconds quicker than his father. Bit of pressure on father there. Father's a 4. And Harold, you can see some margin off, but don't forget he is in one of 4 GT4 runners in this field. So these Porsche Caymans will have their own battle. But out front, it's Luke Hartog by just over half a second. Maurice Shoring also got below 1 minute 40. Now, and is there going to be an improvement here from Harold Godin? Very close to his best, but not matching it, down by 0.3 of a second. Just to reiterate, in the GT4 class, it's Team GP Elite with all 4 cars in the field. But Alexander Godin top, 1 minute 44.9 seconds, 1/10 of a second to the good over Steven Van Ree, who is 16 thousandths faster than Thierry Van Meulen. Then you get a 3 and a bit second gap back to Harold Godin. But at the moment, Steven Van Ree, number 72, really trying his best. Let's see his first sector time. Is he going to improve on that? He's got to have to improve if he wants to get ahead of Alexander Godin. Track very much with a dry line, but it's still damp towards the edges, so drivers having to exert considerable caution. Not as much wind as you often get at the circuit, that would help drive, but it's still low temperatures. But through that final corner, lovely sweep there from Steven Van Ree. Will he be doing enough around this lap to improve? In fact, his sector times have disappeared from my screen, so there may be a slight transponder problem. But this 15-minute session very, very nearly at an end. 0.54 of a second between Luke Hartog at the top of the charts. We're looking at Michael Kuhl, he's 4th, top Pro-Am runner for NGT Racing. 1 minute 41.499 seconds, his best. Looks so he touch and go. If he has a nice sweep through the Arie Luijendijk Bocht, which if he can improve on his lap time, but he's not likely to get enough to topple Gilles Smits. He stays in 4th place, and he's down by 1/3 of a second on his best. Time for 1 further lap for him, and then the checker flag will greet him at the end of this one. And just looking down through the classes, it's 2 pros at the top, Luke Hartog and Maurice Shoring. Gilles Smit is the top AM runner for Speed Lover in 3rd place overall. Top Pro-Am runner, Michael Kuhl in 4th. Then comes Nicolas van Dierendonck, Bas Barenbourg and Jean-Pierre Verhoeven. Those are all the GT3 runners. Then Alexander Godin, top of the GT4 runners by, still that tiny fraction of a second, 0.119 of a second, but doesn't matter. If it was 0.001 of a second, he would still have that position as the top of the GT4 runners. Just looking to see if Maurice Shoring can do anything about the pace of Luke Hartog. Luke has done the job in this session. He can cruise it back to the pits. There's a 5-minute gap, then they go out and qualify all over again for another 15 minutes, and definitely Luke has backed off. But where he really finds his advantage is the first of the 3 sectors. So tricky run down through the double apex of Tarzan, along the ridge behind the paddock at Gerlach Bocht, and then the sector comes to an end after the newly banked Hugenholzbocht, a much less severe corner than it used to be, but it still drops down into the dip underneath Gerlach Bocht. And then that wonderful rear shot, you see the drivers coming up the hill out of Hugenholzbocht, heading over the ridge, out of sight effectively, and then onto the wonderful middle section of the circuit that includes the Rob Slottermacher Bocht and Schevlach as well. Fantastic flowing corners, if you get it right, that is. Checkered flag is out on the finish line. It's still Luke Hartog by just over half of a second. The car that's top in GT4 is this one, the number 71 Team GP Elite entry, Alexander Godin. And he's still got that narrow margin, and he's not improving on it this time around. So to be back into the pits at the end of this, unless he decides to complete this flying lap and try and put it on the board. But actually he's looking very tidy from Alexander Godin. But in fact, don't forget, that time is down on the time of the GT3 runners, not his own time. So maybe this could still be a lap that he wants to complete on the track, not with his wheels in the dirt on the outside. Good save there, but the track a little bit too twisty at turn number 9 there for Alexander Godin. Has he been chastened? Has he backed off? Or has he decided, I got away with it, and pressing on? But he's still top in the GT4 class. So his target time to beat his own time, 1 minute 44.974 seconds, but he's only to the good by 0.119 of a second from Steven Van Rie, and then a whisker behind that, Thierry Vermeulen. Very, very close indeed between the top runners in the GT4 class. It's still Alexander Godin into the final corner, the sweeping, sloping, banked Arie Luyendyk-Bock with the indicators on. That little wheel off into the dirt has convinced him discretion is the better part of valour. A lot of the other runners already arriving in the pit lane for that 5-minute turnaround, and then they go out and do it all over again. So the order for the grid for this afternoon's race, the first of 3 races for the Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux and the Sprint Cup as well, is Luke Hartog by 0.274 of a second. The last lap for Maurice Scheuring closed him right in, so just over 1/4 of a second between the pair. Then 1 second back to Gilles Smit, the top AM runner in 3rd overall. Top Pro-Am runner 4th, Nicolas van Dierendonck. So a good, tidy qualifying session, 1 wheel in the dirt, and I think that was all we saw. But bragging rights at the moment to the 17-year-old Luke Hartog by 1/4 of a second over the 15-year-old Maurice Scheuring. They get younger all the time as I get older. 3rd place overall, number 17, top AM runner Gilles Smit, top Pro-Am runner in 4th. Good, tidy session. And right at the end, Thierry Vermeulen moved up into the top position ahead of Alexander Godin by 54 thousandths of a second to be the top GT4 runner. So maybe Alexander Godin shouldn't have backed off on that final lap before the interval. The interval ahead of qualifying session number 2. They're down in the pits. The drivers have, maybe some of them had used that session as an assimilation to gauge the track conditions. There was still wet areas of the circuit when they went out for qualifying session number 1. Nicolas van Dierendonck, top Pro-Am runner, running for EMG Motorsport, and he was 4th overall. But they certainly would know a whole lot more about the experience out of the circuit. And for a lot of the drivers, it's a change of tyres. Slick tyres going on for this second session. Slick tyres coming off, I think, for Luke Hartog. So the 17-year-old for Bas Kuiten Racing, great job. In the end, just over 1/4 of a second to the good over Maurice Scheuring. And while the drivers, looking at the tail of Michael Kuhl's car, that was 5th fastest, assess the situation. We know the grid for race 1, this afternoon's race. Qualifying session number 2 has a dual purpose. It will define the grid for the first of the 2 races tomorrow, and then the times from qualifying session 1 and qualifying session 2 will be combined, aggregated, and that will define the grid for the 3rd race. The one that will have not a standing start, but a rolling start at the end of play tomorrow afternoon. So plenty to play for these runners, lots of track time, but still, wherever you look at it, particularly on a track that's got tricky conditions, and the drivers really have to learn their way around. 15 minutes of qualifying. It's about delivering in a fairly quick time scale. Maurice Scheuring, well, until this year he was racing karts. Just to reiterate, this is his 2nd weekend ever in a car race meeting. At his 1st weekend, he took a 2nd in the opening race, pole position, win, and fastest lap in the 2nd. He's rather well coached. This year's newly crowned Porsche Super Cup champion, Larry ten Voorde, fellow Dutch racer who's really going places. He is advising young Maurice Scheuring, and if you want advice, take it from someone who's at the top of the tree in the Porsche Super Cup racing world. Larry ten Voorde has had a really, really strong season, starting to branch out. And Luke Hartog, aged driver at the age of 17. 2 years ago, he won the Ford Fiesta Cup in the Benelux region. And last year, he was 2nd in this championship. So he really does expect to take the title. But 4 races over the first 2 rounds, even Stevens. 80 points apiece at the top of the championship. Luke Hartog and Maurice Scheuring. At the moment, Nicolas van Dierendonck, who's the top Pro-Am runner in this race, ahead of Michael Kuhl. This race meeting, he is top of the Pro-Am standings. And in the Porsche Sprint Challenge, the Benelux Porsche Sprint Challenge, Nicolas van Dierendonck is top of that. And top in the GT4 standings is Thierry Vermeulen. He was the one who just grabbed the GT4 pole right at the end of the first qualifying session. Team GP Elite, not just busy running the 4 cars in GT4, but also the young charger, entry number 14, Maurice Schuring. Schuring Racing written large on the bonnet, but clearly a driver who's learning very, very quickly indeed. And again, often when you step up from karting, it's learning how to handle wet circuits that is part of the learning curve. The track, as you can see in the pit lane, it's actually still quite slippery underfoot. Sun doesn't hit that patch of concrete in front of the pit lane until later in the day. Out on the track though, easier for the wind to get at it, easier for the sun to get at it, and qualifying session 2 already almost 2 minutes underway. For the drivers, I think time spent in the pits gathering their thoughts, probably not time wasted. What we saw in the first session was Luke Hartog was the slowest of all the drivers, or last of all the drivers, to get around to setting a flying lap, but when he did, he meant business. It was quickly down into the 1 minute 41s, then the 1 minute 40s, then bang into the 1 minute 38s. His fastest lap, 1 minute 38.810. No other driver got below 139, so he absolutely delivered. But as I said, second in the Porsche Carrera Cups Benelux last year, and he really absolutely, for his career momentum, needs to make sure he bags that title. It must be quite difficult at 17 to be made to feel old by another driver, but that's the case because Maurice Schuring, just 15 years old. The weather improving all the time, right at the start of the day before the first of the cars hit the track. We didn't see sunshine for a while. We saw brighter sky and we saw much darker sky. And at the start of the GT World Challenge race early this morning, we had rain between laps 1 and lap 4, and then no more. So in a field that was split between people who went out on slicks and people who went on wets, it was a very, very fine balance. It's slicks all the way now for the Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux. Now for Baz Barenbrug, he'll be looking to pick up the pace. Only 6th in that first qualifying session. He's got to find 0.8 of a second to see if he can match the pace of Michael Kuhl, but I would think the majority of these drivers are going to be quicker in this session. They had that first qualifying session, which will set the grid for this afternoon's race, to really appraise the circumstances. All the drivers staying off the curbs. That's Baz Barenbrug being very wise at the moment. Still the curbs damper the majority of the circuit. So green lights on the starting gantry, so the drivers know the session is fully underway, but now they're starting their first flying laps. Getting the braking right down into Tarzan. It's a 2-trick pony, double apex, slightly banked, helps the drivers around. And this wonderful little run behind the paddock, the narrow paddock, Gellachbocht. Then you dive down into the re-profiled Hugenholzbocht. The track runs a little more of a shallow angle, then up that wonderful rise, and then you're really starting to motor the power down. You've got to look over the top of these brows through the wonderful sweepers at the Rob Slaughtermacherbocht. That's exactly where Baz Barenbrug is at the moment, and then you know what's coming next. You can't see it until you're almost there. Chevlac dropping down between the dunes. He's also got to look in his mirrors because suddenly being pushed very hard indeed by the car coming from behind. Trying to make space around the circuit, number 5. Baz Barenbrug picking his way through. That's all absolutely fine. In that first session, 1 minute 42.3 seconds for Baz Barenbrug. I reckon he will improve on that in this session. They've had that moment of thought in the pit lane, maybe change the tyre pressures a little bit. The temperature is going up, both in the air and on the track temperature itself. The speed, it will come by dint of fastest in the first sector and the second sector of anybody in this field at the moment. But then again, he's the first one on a flying lap, and he's in a GT3 car, so it should be quicker than the GT4s. Most certainly, those 4 Porsche Caymans driven very well, but they don't have the legs on the bigger, more powerful 911 GT3 Cup cars. So let's see on his first flying lap, can Baz Barenbrug improve on his first session time, which was 1 minute 42.3. No, not yet at this moment. But what we're seeing is the average time already on the right-hand side, because those times are combined. Session 1 time and session 2 for the grid for the third of these races. So slightly complicated, but we're setting the grid for race 2 and race 3 at the same time. And Luke Hartog, like in the first session, content he can find the speed when he needs to. He's sitting in the pits, he's just letting the track dry out a little bit more. It'll be getting drier all the time. The air temperature is rising. And of course, with traffic out on the circuits and anybody running a little bit wide, that helps, makes the racing line just that little bit wider. And Maurice Schuring also biding his time. So the fastest 2 in the first qualifying session, sitting in the pit lane, but the yellow nose of the Schuring Racing GT3 Cup car just about to leave the pit lane. Always looks so they're leaving incredibly slowly, but they have to stay below the pit speed limit until they've almost crested the first part of Tarzan, and then they can get to the white line and unleash it onto the circuit. Almost halfway through this session, Baz Barenbrug seems to be the first of the GT3 Cup runners who are really pushing now. Baz was 6th in that first session. Teammate of the driver who was fastest, Luke Hartog, but this looks a much better lap. The first flying lap, quite cautious from Baz Barenbrug. Will we start to see him push his way up the order? 1 minute 44.4, so he's now got an average 1 minute 43.4. That's for the grid for session 3, but in terms of session 2, he's got a time on the board. Up that wonderful climb he goes. And it's Gilles Smits who's fastest, Baz Barenbrug's second fastest at the moment. That's a gap of 4.3 seconds between them. So for speed lover, Belgian racer Gilles Smits really making it work very well for him. So in fact, that lap from Gilles Smits in number 17 for speed lover. Oh, he's been caught just half a second in arrears now. Is Nicola van Dierendonck, still waiting for a time from Luke Hartog. Maurice Schuring waiting to put one on the board. Everybody else has recorded a lap. So it's Gilles Smits who's in provisional pole with 6 minutes remaining in this session for race number 2. And Nicola van Dierendonck second, Michael Kuhl third, Baz Barenbrug dropping back to 4th place overall. Waiting for the pace to come from Maurice Schuring. Completing his outlap. It's what he does next time around that counts. Was happy to sit out half of this 15-minute session. Confident that he just needs probably a couple of flying laps to put his best one on the board. Going high on the midpoint, right up on the banked Hugenholzbocht, then trying to get, it's all about getting the best exit to then power up over the hill, over the crest, through the Rob Slottermacher bocht, and on through Scheeflack. And a lot of the drivers there really thinking about braking only when they've gone through this corner, Scheeflack, when they get down to the bottom for the Masters bocht. Huge gravel trap built into the sand dunes on the outside of the Scheeflack corner. And over the years I've seen cars go a very long way into and up that gravel bed, but it does a great job of catching those who fall. And certainly for drivers, when it breaks away, the tail comes around on you at Scheeflack. It's very much a heart in mouth moment. Gilles Smits top now from Michael Kuhl, goes up into second place, 0.13 of a second in arrears. Still waiting for a flying lap from Luke Hartog, a flying lap from Maurice Schuring, and Maurice Schuring banging in some very quick times around this lap. Looks like he'll be going to the top of the charts, but Gilles Smits down 1 minute 39.7. That's very much an improvement on the first session. Also Michael Kuhl below 1 minute 40, 1 minute 40.09 for Nicola van Dierendonck. Very tight at the top. But I sense we're going to have a new name at the top very soon. It will be Maurice Schuring, and then we'll have to see what Luke Hartog can do in the final 4 minutes. But Gilles Smits with another couple of laps under his belt in comparison to Hartog. And Schuring is at the top, and he's going faster all the time. Michael Kuhl second. Luke Hartog's first flyer puts him into 5th place. Maurice Schuring, his first flyer, putting him into 8th, but fear not, I feel those names will be up in the first, definitely in the first 4, maybe the first 2, the end of it all. But Stefan Gilles goes faster still. Sorry, Gilles Smits, I beg your pardon. 1 minute 39.173. He's 3/4 of a second ahead of Michael Kuhl. And here comes car number 14 at the moment. Maurice Schuring, slowest of the lot. I don't think that's going to last for long because his first sector time looks very good indeed. Through the complicated, slower, twistier middle section of the circuit he goes now. And then down the infield straight towards Hans Ernst Boch. His second sector time will pop on the board. Waiting that to come up. He's just about across the line for that. And the middle sector, fastest of anybody. He's down at the moment 10th out of the 11 runners. The racing line is the dry line. For the moment, with a dozen cars out to play, they can be on the dry line all the time they want unless they come across a slower back marker. But complaining about traffic isn't an excuse that washes. So Gilles Smits top of the time charts, and he's now toppled. He goes second. Oh, 3/4 of a second now between Maurice Schuring, who goes to the top of the charts, and Gilles Smits. Where is Luke Hartog? He's down in 6th place. No, he isn't. He's just gone top. As I looked at the timing screen, he moved on top by 8/10 of a second, or as near as, ahead of Maurice Schuring. So he was first in the first qualifying session. Now he's top in qualifying session number 2. 2 minutes remain. Top of the GT4s is Thierry Vermeulen. Remember last time he did it right on the final lap to move ahead of Alexander Godin. It's the same order between them. Stephen Van Rie again in 3rd place and Harold Godin in 4th overall. Half a second between the top 3 runners in GT4. It is close in that pass. And Luke Hartog seems to have the answers to any of the questions that are being asked at the moment. Maurice Schuring very, very quick indeed. But number 4, Luke Hartog, 1 minute 37.645 seconds. That's already 1.1 seconds faster than his pole time for race number 1. But this defining the grid for race number 2. And then for the mathematicians, we'll squeeze those 2 times together, aggregate them, and that will set the grid for race number 3. That's the one tomorrow afternoon. Checkered flag probably set to be unfurled, and I just want to take my hat off to Gilles Smits in 3rd place. He's only 3/4 of a second down on Maurice Schuring, but he stepped up from Fun Cup. That's a really entertaining series in the Benelux with space frames that vaguely look like VW Beetles, but they don't drive like VW Beetles. And huge fields of cars go out competing in the 24-hour race at Spa-Francorchamps, another great event. So a big step up for him here, but running really well. 3rd fastest overall, a second down on Maurice Schuring. Luke Hartog, another lap on the board, no improvement. He was down by 4/10 of a second, but he's still half a second clear of Maurice Schuring. Is that going to be enough? Handful of seconds more before the checkered flag will be revealed. But those top 2 drivers, half a second between them. In the first session it was less than that. It was just 1/4 of a second. So maybe there's more to come from Maurice Schuring. Top GT4 still Thierry Vermeulen for Team GP Elite. All the GT4s actually entered by Team GP Elite, so a bit of a commentator's trick there. Going high, the checkered flag is out on the start-finish line. Car 14, driven by Maurice Schuring, not improving in the first sector. Needs to improve, has to find half a second if he wants to take pole for this second of the 3 Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux races, but it's not going to happen on this lap. I think that gold standard by Luke Hartog is going to be good enough. In fact, as you can see, the middle sector down on the best by Hartog as well. So Hartog's got this one in the bag. And for Maurice Schuring, he's going to be safe in 2nd place, one feels, because no improvements coming the way from Gilles Smits. In fact, Gilles has already reported to the pits for Speed Lover. He's had enough. That 3rd place secure. But for Maurice Schuring, his best lap so far, 1 minute 38.1. And no improvement, but he's set to a decent average. So the average is the combined times of qualifying session 1 and 2 will form the grid for race 3. So that looks like a 2nd place on the grid for all 3 races. for Maurice Schuring, and that'll be 3 pole positions for Luke Hartog. So he's done a very, very strong job. These young, these teenagers, Maurice Schuring, just 50, it says 14 on the door, but he's 15. And it's 4 on the door for the driver who's fastest, Luke Hartog, but he's 17 years old, so young, but taking to these cars with absolute aplomb. Luke Hartog was already actually driven into the pits, but that margin of 0.495 of a second over young Maurice Schuring. Looking very, very good indeed. And from both of them, but particularly Luke Hartog, he does a lap and then he can do a couple more very close to it. The job is done. So he's fast and he's consistent. Top runner in the AM class was Gilles Smits for Speed Lover. Top Pro-Am runner, Michael Cool in car number 919. There he is taking a shortcut back to the paddock, hooking off just after the Hansen box, so he doesn't want to do the bother with going from the main paddock to the second. Sort of moment as a commentator, you look at the screen and you think for a second, where is that? So 2 good tidy sessions from the Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux, and they'll be racing this afternoon. There it is, overall classification for the second session. Luke Hartog ahead of Maurice Schuring. Then come the Belgians, Gilles Smit, Michael Cool and Nicolas van Dierendonk. With Gilles top in the AM class, 3rd overall. Top Pro-Am runner, Michael Cool in 4th for NGT Racing. And bragging rights in the GT4 class, Thierry Van Meulen from Stephen Van Rie, who late on just moved ahead of Alexandre Godin, and Father Godin, Harold, in 4th in the class. So 2 qualifying sessions out of the way, defining the grid for all 3 of the Porsche races here at Zandvoort this weekend. Track conditions, though, improving all the time, and that was a big help through those 2 sessions. And right from the outset, it was experience where the dry line is. And the good thing, the dry line got wider and wider as the temperature crept up a little bit. And some good running early on from the number 17, Gilles Smits, but it was Maurice Schuring picking up the pace. Number 9 was in the mix as well. I mean, a good old run out there. But it was Luke Hartog who went to the top in number 4, sweeping through to take pole in the first session. He went and did it all over again, and that was an exuberant moment there from Alexandre Godin. Kicked the tail out, but just about kept his GT4 on the track. That was the first of the sessions. They went out and did it all over again. I think every single one of them was faster. The track was drying out, and they had that 15 minutes of experience from the first qualifying session. Big attack from Maurice Schuring, but really the story, Gilles Smits was the top AM runner in the number 17 entry, but it was number 4 that went to the top of the charts. That was Luke Hartog. He left it late in both of the sessions, but he came through. And in the end, it was Luke Hartog from Maurice Schuring with half a second in hand. First of 3 races to follow.